Imagine America in the 1920s, a time when women were expected to be exemplary wives, keepers of the hearth, and symbols of virtue. Strong families, faithful husbands, modest attire, and impeccable reputations. This was what society dictated. But then came a girl who shattered all the norms. 5 marriages by the age of 29, provocative outfits, and affairs with married men. Hollywood was shocked by her behavior. She lived too fast and too brightly, but in an instant, it all came to an end. This is the tragic story of Barbara Marr, the girl who was too beautiful. Barbara Marr, born Reifenstein, came into the world on July 28, 1896 in Kansas City, Missouri. This small, almost provincial town was hardly a standout on the map of America. A gray backdrop for a woman whose life would become a vibrant kaleidoscope of passion, drama, and scandal. It seemed fate itself was urging Barbara to find a way out of this routine. Barbara's father, the editor of a local newspaper, was a man of refined ideas and progressive views. He believed that words could change the world and raised his daughter with a spirit of curiosity and a thirst for something greater. But if her father was an idealist, her mother balances with practicality and strictness. Conservative to the core, she saw Barbara not as a dreamer but as a future perfect homemaker and wife. What happens next? The Reifenstein family moved to California in search of a better life. This step proved to be pivotal for Barbara. Among the palm trees, sunlight, and wealth, the young girl caught her first glimpse of the luxuries she'd only read about before. Beautiful women in silk dresses, men with refined manners and charming smiles. It was as if a new universe had opened up for Barbara. Her dreams grew larger, her ambitions brighter, and an inner voice kept whispering, "You deserve more than this dull routine." From an early age, Barbara stood out among her peers with her extraordinary beauty. Her eyes, deep and expressive, and her facial features, described by adults as too feminine for a child, drew attention and provoked mixed reactions. Some admired her, while others spoke about her with disapproval. She often heard, "You look like a grown woman in a child's body," a compliment that both elevated her and created a tense atmosphere around her. This beauty became both a blessing and a curse, making her the object of scrutiny long before she understood its implications. But her appearance was only one facet of her personality. Barbara refused to fit into the rigid mold of her era. She despised the rules dictating how a girl should behave and was unafraid to voice her frustration. At 14, she ran away from home, driven by a spirit of adventure and a thirst for freedom. Late-night parties, hidden from her conservative parents' watchful eyes, became her first taste of adult life. "Why should I live the way they say?" she once retorted when her mother scolded her for coming home late. However, her pursuit of freedom came with consequences. Rumors about her improper behavior spread quickly through town. People whispered that Barbara was too free-spirited for her age, often exaggerating her every move. These stories, often far from the truth, wounded her more deeply than she was willing to admit. And here's what happens next. At the age of 16, Barbara took a step that shocked not only her family but also everyone in their social circle. She ran away with a man much older than herself, an act that became a true sensation. At first glance, it seemed like a romantic adventure, but reality turned out to be cruel. The man she'd tied to her life to was both abusive and greedy. Her first marriage became a prison, shattering her romantic illusions about love. "I thought I had found freedom, but I ended up in a new cage," Barbara later said about that time. This escape was the final straw for her parents. Their disappointment in her, combined with the shame they felt in the eyes of society, led to an almost complete rupture of their relationship. Barbara was left on her own, without the support of a family that had once been her foundation, albeit a strict one. After her divorce, Barbara moved to Los Angeles. The city where dreams turned into reality and illusions became a way of life. Her stunning beauty opened the doors to the most sophisticated salons and glamorous parties. The rich and famous were eager to do anything to have her at their gatherings. Barbara quickly realized that her looks were her ticket to a new world where poverty and humiliation were things of the past. Yet her beauty was not only a blessing but also a challenge. While some admired her, others were scandalized by her bold behavior. Barbara loved to provoke. She laughed louder than was considered proper, danced in ways no one dared, and dressed to highlight her individuality. Even for the progressive society of the 1920s, her freedom was considered too daring. The press couldn't resist the magic of her personality. Headlines screamed about Barbara, dubbing her the girl who lives too fast. She was linked to affairs with wealthy and influential men, from film producers to politicians. Some of these stories were true, while others were the creations of imaginative journalists, but all of them solidified her reputation as a femme fatale. This image was both her calling card and the burden she carried. "Why should I live the way others want?" she said, openly showing her disdain for society's expectations. For many women, Barbara became a symbol of courage. For others, she was the embodiment of immorality. Her beauty and independence became fertile ground for gossip. Every act of hers sparked a new story in the papers, tales of her depraved lifestyle, turbulent romances, or even secret conspiracies. But these rumors rarely had any basis in reality. Barbara often laughed at the exaggerations, knowing that her life as seen by others was more myth than truth. Barbara quickly learned that fame wasn't just about success, it was about staying interesting. Scandals became her primary tool. Even if her reputation suffered, she remained the center of attention. "Sometimes it's better be talked about than forgotten," she confessed to friends. This balance between freedom and attention, between truth and fiction, became a cornerstone of her life. Barbara wielded scandals like a weapon to stay at the top in a world that had no tolerance for weakness. And how did Barbara turn gossip into her greatest strength? Barbara Marr began her Hollywood career with small episodic roles. At first, her presence on screen was primarily decorative. Studios capitalized on her stunning beauty, but her looks were far from her only asset. Barbara possessed a rare magnetism that could captivate an audience, even in silence. Her charisma and natural dramatic talent quickly set her apart from the crowd. Each of her new films confirmed one thing: she wasn't just beautiful, she was unique. The turning point in her career came with lead roles in films like The Prisoner of Zenda and The Three Musketeers. These productions not only became box office hits, but also solidified Barbara's status as one of the brightest stars of the silent film era. Critics and audiences alike couldn't get enough of her. She was dubbed the most beautiful woman in the world. Do you think she earned the title? Hollywood adored Barbara, but its love was treacherous. Her face became a sort of trademark, a symbol of the era that studios used to rake in millions. Yet behind this dazzling facade lay a sea of disappointments. Barbara longed for complex, dramatic roles that would showcase her true acting talent. However, producers saw her only as a femme fatale, a character that guaranteed box office success. What was her beauty to her? Her beauty was both her greatest asset and her biggest trap. Barbara's rise to fame was marked by encounters with Hollywood's most influential figures. She had a remarkable ability to charm, turning relationships with producers and directors into career opportunities. But such connections often came with ambiguity and personal sacrifices. Many men saw her as merely a beautiful woman, forgetting that before them stood a person with ambitions and profound emotions. Barbara understood that her beauty was her weapon, but she refused to be a prisoner of stereotypes. Despite the pressure from studios eager to cast her in the perpetual role of a femme fatale, she fought for the right to be taken seriously as an actress. Barbara was determined and believed that her career was not just a reflection of her appearance, but also of her talent, which she sought to fully express despite all the constraints. Barbara Marr's personal life was filled with both passion and pain. In her short years, she experienced 5 marriages, each as dramatic as a Hollywood script. Her first union with a cruel and controlling man taught her lessons in mistrust and fear, leaving deep emotional scars. Yet Barbara continued to search for love, the kind that would bring her the sense of peace she'd always craved. But what? Each new relationship became another illusion. Behind the grand declarations of love lurked control, jealousy, and betrayal. Every time Barbara entered a new marriage, she believed that this time would be different. Yet her hopes were inevitably dashed against reality. The men in her life often saw her more as a prize to be won than as an equal partner. Those disappointments didn't break her, but they left her heart heavy with bitterness and exhaustion. Barbara often found herself trapped in the persona of a femme fatale. She was accused of infidelity, flirtation, and manipulation, though many of these rumors were entirely baseless. She became a victim of the very image that had brought her fame. Scandals kept her in the spotlight, but they also destroyed her from within, stripping her of the chance to simply be herself. Yet the most challenging trials were still ahead of her. One of the most painful chapters in Barbara's life was the story of her motherhood. She gave birth to a son, but soon realized she couldn't provide him with a stable life. Constant moves, a grueling filming schedule, health issues, and her growing dependency forced her to leave her child in the care of others. This decision became a source of profound anguish for Barbara, a wound that never truly healed. She often confided in friends, saying, "I wanted to be a good mother for him, but I turned out to be too weak." At the height of her fame, Barbara Marr surrounded herself with admirers, luxury, and grand parties, yet deep down she remained profoundly lonely. Amidst the glitter of Hollywood, she yearned for genuine, heartfelt connections. "They love my face, not me," she would say with a bitter smile, noting that people saw her only as a beautiful image. Loneliness became her constant companion, despite her whirlwind life filled with people and events. What was she searching for to find solace? As the years passed, Barbara increasingly sought solace in alcohol and medication. What began as a means to alleviate stress and combat insomnia gradually became her prison. Personal pain, heartbreak, and the exhaustion from constant scandals only deepened her dependence. Her inner demons began to destroy not only her body, but also her spirit, pushing away even those who still tried to help her. Barbara Marr, once a dazzling screen presence surrounded by the wealthiest and most influential people, ultimately found herself penniless. The enormous earnings she enjoyed at the peak of her career vanished with alarming speed. A lavish lifestyle, extravagant parties, expensive gifts, and jewelry drained her finances. Barbara lived entirely in the moment, giving little thought to the future. Eventually, she was left in poverty, stripped of the glamour that had once been her hallmark. As Barbara's career began to fade, so did the crowd around her. Those who once admired her beauty and sought her attention disappeared. Colleagues and friends who'd surrounded her at social events turned away. Barbara found herself alone in a world where yesterday's star quickly became a forgotten relic. Her once vibrant and noisy life fell silent, leaving her in a painful solitude. Years of alcohol and medication abuse left Barbara in a dire state. She suffered from exhaustion, depression, and constant physical pain. Her health deteriorated rapidly, and her attempts at recovery were thwarted by the hopelessness of her situation. Barbara tried to fight her demons. She understood that alcohol and medication were destroying her, but breaking free from addiction proved nearly impossible. Chronic depression and exhaustion drained her strength, while her inner turmoil pushed her back into the very abyss she was struggling to escape. Despite all the difficulties, Barbara never gave up hope of returning to the screen. Time and again, she attempted to pitch herself for roles, but her reputation as a troubled actress deterred producers. In Hollywood's eyes, she was no longer a star capable of drawing crowds, but a cautionary tale of how high one could rise and how devastatingly one could fall. In her final years, Barbara made efforts to reconnect with those close to her. She sought support from friends, but help came too late. Barbara was never able to fully recover, either physically or emotionally. Her struggle to save herself remained as an unfinished tragedy. The people who surrounded her during her years of glory had abandoned her. Colleagues, friends, and admirers, they all disappeared when Barbara was no longer a source of inspiration or benefit. The men who had been captivated by her beauty and sought her company left, leaving her alone with her memories. Her name was mentioned less and less in the press, and for the younger generation, she became little more than a forgotten star. By the end of her life, Barbara was utterly depleted, both physically and emotionally. Her body could no longer endure the effects of years of alcohol and medication abuse. Chronic fatigue, depression, and mounting health problems followed her like an unshakable shadow. These ailments delivered the final blow to her once indomitable spirit. In the final weeks of her life, Barbara tried to reconnect with the son she'd been forced to leave behind years earlier. However, her health was rapidly deteriorating and her mental state was on the brink of collapse. Her dreams of a fresh start remained just dreams. She spent her last days in deep despair, fully aware that there was no longer a chance for a brighter future. Barbara Marr passed away on January 30th, 1926, just shy of her 29th birthday. Her death was both unexpected and at the same time, almost inevitable, to those who knew of her lifestyle. Years of substance abuse had severely weakened her body, and the complications arising from it ultimately led to her untimely death. Her life ended far too soon, becoming a symbol of the tragic fate of those who gave themselves entirely to Hollywood.